All right, so continue our discussion from last week about how the urban environment impacts the patterns and behaviors of families. Like urban environments affect most any and everything. Keep in mind, we talked about that. Important focus in this discussion is it was the first time in human history where we began to have a profound separation between work and home. We talked about in previous chapters how the communities in many of these urban environments were very segregated based on race, ethnicity, also social class. And on the chapter on gender in the city, we discussed some of the ways that people were segregated based on sex and gender. As we get into the urban environment, there is a different perception of a family, in city families in particular. Oftentimes, rural towns would be associated with quote unquote family values. And it would be believed that those values were hard to sustain in urban environments, and that family wasn't as highly valued. People want to hang out with their friends, with people in their social networks, and that life in big cities keep you so busy, particularly with work, that there was little time for families. Again, keep in mind this is early industrialization, uh, urbanization, where people would be working really long hours. And when they would come home, oftentimes all they want to do is sleep. When many of the immigrants come up, they might live in quote unquote big houses that will consist of 25 people, oftentimes anonymous strangers.
Question, Dr. Hunter.
I'm sorry, say it again, sir.
Oh, my fault. My voice was breaking. Just like how you just talking about basically during that time how they were having like I guess like issues like with the family. Do you still? I mean, do you believe like we still have that going like currently? Like even though we're already past we're it's post industrialization period. With us and like technology and everything else still continuing to grow. Do you still feel like there's like a divide in the family still, like with 4 and 3 year olds having like iPads and everything. Like they don't get to experience, I guess, like the bond of family, like how we used to, or like how older generations would.
No, I think that's a great question and an astute observation. I absolutely, first of all, like these things, they can't help but to play a role. Um, to be clear, like I think there, are some cases, excuse me, where the technology can help bring people closer together. But as we talked about even in earlier chapters where we discussed how the public square in urban environments is not enjoyed as much anymore, where people can come together from different backgrounds because the technology has made it where, we can kind of stay a lot more isolated. So absolutely, I think that that's probably happening within the family structure as well, where sometimes even if you do have like a big mama style Sunday dinner, everybody might be on their cell phones or something like that, as opposed to interacting with one another.
Facts.
But I know like I feel bad in a way, like for example, like my from a family reunion a few years ago, like they started like this like listserv, if you will, to allow people in the family to like be in contact more. Um, and it'll be like a lot of times get emails and like hey, like cousin Deshaun's birthday is today, and I don't know who cousin Deshaun is, and it's like I'm getting all this information about relatives I don't know and probably won't meet. So after a while, like I had to bow out of it. I felt kind of bad, but it's like, all right, look, Y'all send me one more, email about, Auntie Clarice going on vacation, and I'm gonna lose my mind.
especially on Facebook.
But I
I
do think
yeah.
I do think you're right though. There's a breakdown. I know that I don't have children myself, but I know from my cousins and brothers and stuff, my brother and my sister, when she was still alive, that they lamented that the generation of cousins and stuff today, they don't know each other in the ways that we did. Like, so we grew up in environments where we would get shipped from Chicago 6, 7, 8, 9 deep down to Birmingham, and we would like, spend the summer and kick it with our cousins and stuff. And today all of us are very, very, very close, from those years and everything. So just it's amazing to think about now, like, with our parents and stuff, and like, having all these little bad kids running around. But those kind of things don't happen. And as I've learned in talking to many of my friends, from up north, those kind of things were very common back in the day. Where people get from Detroit, New York. Like I said, everybody from up north pretty much came from the South. So oftentimes our parents were very deliberate about, making sure that those connections still maintained and would ship us down south, have them come up north sometime, and really, form bonds in that way. So I think that some of that has broken down as the technology has kept us more busy, more distant, distracted. But always keep in mind these days can, that we can also use these technologies to build community. That and being away, and isolated from my people in Chicago, now the technology allows me to stay plugged in ways that would have been more difficult, in the 1990s. We also begin to see like, disappearance of like, traditional type neighborhoods and social solidarity, particularly as like we talked about before in gentrification and things like that. There's some of the nature of these communities is really changing. Because again, you could, there's a mythology that, in urban environment, you don't have like, collegial type communities where everybody, again, you ain't finna know everybody in New York City. But on your, few blocks and stuff like that, again, you may be very familiar with like, most of the people like, on that block. But as these blocks get gentrified, it kind of leads to like, some of these breakdowns. And as always, we talked about this a little bit in, principles of sociology. You took that with me. When we talk about social functions, the word that we're looking at there is purpose. Purpose. Function speaks to purpose. So what is the purpose of family? Again, it's not just reproduce and pop babies out. What is the goal here? So some of these are obvious. But what this section speaks to is how the urban environment maybe change that function a little bit. We'll talk about this in more detail in a moment. As always, if there are any questions or comments, don't hesitate to let me know.
I got another question that I want to sure. Right
Yes, sir.
here on third bulletin, you're talking. It says political parties. Um, I know you're gonna still go over it, but like, how would that like be a change in function for like like political beliefs, or is there like a second meaning to that? I guess in the way you was gonna break that down.
Oh, no, great question. It speaks to that the function that the family used to serve. A lot of people are getting these, from these type of groups now that you might not be able to like, get the kind of social emotional support that you want in your household family. So maybe you get that from your church. Maybe you get that from your peers. Maybe you get that from your involvement in a local political party or other voluntary associations. So where it says there before there that industrialization allowed previous functions of family to be taken over by several institutions. And some of those institutions include schools, churches, peer groups, etc. As we discussed throughout, the city has consistently been seen as a place, to be feared and somewhere that's threatening and menacing. In the 1800s, the family could be an escape from all this. Again, everywhere out there is cutthroat. Everybody looking to get over on each other. But in here, we're going to cooperate and look out for one another. So for many, a safe refuge from some of these dangerous locales and urban environments ended up being found in the suburbs. And this is where you begin to have the advent of the quote unquote isolated nuclear family. What this speaks to, again, that through most of human history, in most cultures, exists in what we call the extended family. The extended family, again, is not just, okay, you, your sister, your parents. The extended family consists you, your sister, your parents, your father's brother and his wife and kids, your grandma, your auntie, your cousin and their kids, a friend who y'all call a cousin, but might not even really be related by blood. So increasingly, people would just be isolated amongst their nuclear families, particularly in the suburbs. It was viewed as a morally superior domestic spirit that almost framed like people that lived in the suburbs were better people than people that lived in the city. Clearly, we know that this isn't true, but this was the imagination at the time. People would feel like that they're moving up in stature if they moved from the city to the suburbs. And again, ironically, as we see here in the 20th and 21st century, we see a reverse of that. Many white people are breaking their necks to get back into the cities, as we talked about with gentrification in previous chapters. But during this period, there's a lot of flooding to the suburbs. You can have the sanctity of home where you could be protected and safe from all the mayhem of Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and New Orleans. Again, urban families are oftentimes stereotyped, particularly because, this is, historically you have more Black and brown people living in some of these urban environments. And what the researchers found pretty consistently is the notion that family isn't viable in urban environments just has not had a lot of merit to it. The same needs that people have always got for the families, urban families provide as well. And again, what is the function? What's the purpose of family? To help you if you get sick, not only in terms of your health care, but perhaps in like, assisting with labor and things of that nature. Financial assistance, child care, again, like, you need somebody to watch your kids. Like, obviously this isn't an urban phenomenon, though we would have this too in going over my grandmother's house who lived up north, and other uncles and aunties and stuff. But, child care is very expensive. And a lot of urban families are able to, find ways to circumvent those costs through, like, assistance from a family member. So again, we talked about the difference between nuclear families, where it's generally like, two parents, their children only. But most families historically have followed under an extended family model, Under this model, there is no authoritarian leader. This family isn't dependent upon geographic mobility or occupational similarity. And as I said before, it consists of a series of nuclear families. So Stephen, your wife and kids, your brother and his wife and kids, sister, her husband, his kids, your parents. That in many cases, again, like, that keep in mind, although we talked about, the African-American experience in urban environments, there are many people of Asian background, Hispanic background, and even some Africans that live in households that kind of follow this model, where you don't just have, like, again, the couple and their children living in the house together, but you may have several generations living in this house together. Much like race has an impact upon family structure, your social class positioning also plays a role as well. The working class family structure is a very adult oriented family system. This is important. There are many family systems that are child centered, meaning like, okay, hey, what do you want? Hey, yeah, Stephen, what would you like for dinner today? Hey, well, where do you think we should go to on vacation this summer, young 5-year-old? Working class families ain't like that. These is adult centered. Well, the adults is going to tell you what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. The child in these type of families are expected to behave in ways that are satisfying to the adults. In these family environments, sometimes, not all the time, again, we never want to universalize any human behavior. But oftentimes children will be praised for school achievements. Oh, that's dope that you made the volleyball team. That's really cool that, you're going to be in the school play. So they may give you accolades for that, but they are unlikely to attend the event in working class families. Some of it is because, again, hey, that's a child's life, and I have, a life to live on my own in terms of getting this money. But a lot of it is just, the time that, many, working class, like, I think we're all sports fans here. So, I'm sure we've all seen games where like some professional athlete might be competing like in a major game or like, in college or something. And their parent may be seeing them play for the first time in person or for the first time in a long while, because all through those junior high school games, those high school games, mom and dad may have had to work. And, children understand that, like, again, like sentimentality, help keep the lights on and, make sure that there's food in the fridge. But it's a really important dynamic to consider, and one that I hope you'll consider when you all have children. Very quickly, I remember, when we talk about, family life in urban environments. I remember one day when I was working in Chicago several years ago, I was teaching there and I was working downtown. It was a nice, beautiful spring day. So I was like, I'll enjoy my lunch outside, just sit in the park and chill. And as I'm apt to do, I people watch. And I was like, just amazed at like, and the distinctions and who was able to be out there at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, pushing their kids in strollers, enjoying the urban environment, and how most parents probably had to, be spending their afternoons. And overwhelmingly, like, these were, white middle class women that were out there that had the luxury to be able to, enjoy time with their children at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. That's not something that all parents get, an opportunity to do because, again, the work schedule won't allow it. As you all, again, formulate your families, these are the kind of things I want you to give consideration to. Having a lot of money is wonderful. It's really, you want to get as much as you can. But there's a lot of like wealth in having access and control over your time. And those white women had a lot of control over their time that day. They probably had some other types of wealth as well. We talked about the Great Migration in previous chapters and how that really began to change the structure of urban environments in the North. This went on for the better part of like 40, 50 years, actually, maybe even up to 60. But the primary peak would be between like roughly 1916 and 1919. And again, you had mass relocation from the rural South to the industrial North, primarily for economic reasons. People had attempted to like, farm or sharecrop in the South. The 40 acres north of the mule that had been committed to ended up being forthcoming. So it was a great economic challenge for Black people in the South during this time period. There also was as we talked about, with immigrants coming from Italy, Ireland, Poland, etc. There was a huge demand for cheap labor, and Black people at that time, oftentimes functionally illiterate, possessing limited skills, although oftentimes more skills than some of their white competitors. And there were plenty of jobs to go around as the Industrial Revolution continued to just grow and expand. But upon arriving in these cities, as we discussed, they were hugely discriminated against and subjected to segregated housing that would ultimately extend into the public housing projects that we talked about at length. But where, again, there are many pathologies associated with African Americans including and oftentimes, especially as it relates to African American family. But again and again, it's important to understand that Black people would not have not just survived, but in many cases thrived in these environments in the North and South and everywhere in between without strong family bonds. But sometimes these bonds are seen as weak because they're not within the context of the nuclear family. It oftentimes is believed that if you don't come from or if you don't construct yourself a nuclear family, that your family is somehow dysfunctional. And that's simply not true. Now, we do want to be aware of some of the challenges to the Black family. I don't think that you need, I don't think that it's impossible to have a good family structure if you're not married, but I definitely would encourage us to form more strong unions in this regard. If for no other reason, the economics, it costs a lot to raise a child, and I would encourage you to try and do that with two people and trying to do it by yourself. But also in this country, the welfare laws did a lot. And let's be clear, we talk about welfare, not now or pretty much at any time in history has this been something that's only been exclusive or predominantly used by Black people. Most people on welfare are Caucasian. But the welfare laws even structured in a way where you cannot get welfare benefits if there was an able-bodied man living with you. So oftentimes it would, women would be incentive, families would be incentivized to have the husband living away from the home because you might lose your benefits if there was a man there. Now, that man may be competing in as a Black man in an environment where the jobs are very difficult to find. But the social workers often were not going to account for that, and families could fall deeper into poverty as a result. So in this way, the law it kind of discouraged marriage within African American within poor African American communities. And keep in mind, in all this, we're discussing all the intersections on the family, the urban environment more broadly or suburban environment, the social class structure, again, how much money you have and how much your money your family has a huge impact upon all areas of life. And then, of course, the role that the role that race plays in terms of how Mexican Americans, African Americans, and others are able to experience the city more broadly. And also, of course, make note of how gender within the family also impacts these developments also. Also, a quick public service announcement, and please make note and listen up. We will not meet on Wednesday. We will not meet for class on Wednesday. We will not meet on Wednesday. We will resume on Friday. We will resume class on Friday. So please make sure that you're fully up to speed on the reading by then. And please make note for our full earning of points in this class. We need to position ourselves within the camera center. So much like Steven's doing, Steven, since you seem to be the only one of us that knows how to consistently use the camera on your phone or on your computer, I'm gonna give you 3 extra credit points today. But that's the model that we want to use going forward and how we want to position ourselves, as we've stated and communicated since January. So please make a note of that for Friday's class and going forward. And then, of course, you need to be on, throughout most of the class period. If you need to go to the bathroom or something like that, Stephen, please don't take the camera with you. But otherwise, we want to be active, present, and involved and engaged. Otherwise, the lecture will be recorded and you can check it out at your leisure. But we will not meet on Wednesday. Please be prepared to resume on Friday. An important aspect of this, and we're really seeing this begin to play out more and more in our modern times, is the considerable political clout that more of these groups are getting within these major cities. So whether it be LA, I know the last mayor was a Mexican American. I think the current one is as well. You see in places like Atlanta, DC, where you have Black female mayors. Last week, Boston just got their one, which was shocking. In the Chi, we got us a Black female lesbian mayor. So more and more and more of these groups that have previously been isolated and marginalized when they first arrived in the city are gaining more and more political power. Again, keep this in mind in the cities where you're from or where you may live, that we talked about the suburban ideal in this chapter, but more and more, like, Black people and brown people are getting pushed to the suburbs, and you have more white people returning to the city in environments that usually were very much minority based. Keep this in mind as, I would encourage you to really think carefully about your property decisions accordingly. That oftentimes, there may be neighborhoods and communities that seem like, hey, this is a bad neighborhood, that actually, it's valuable real estate. We'll close on this note in discussing the suburban family life. Well, even though it's perceived a lot of times as a better life, for many, particularly a lot of the wives, we talked about again how we want to look at how class plays a role, how race plays a role, but also gender. In that, again, many women, they will be accustomed to having access to their mothers, having access to their sisters and other, family members. In the suburbs, oftentimes they will be far away and really isolated from, the larger extended families to which many were used to. If there are no further questions or comments, we'll pick this up on Friday. Make sure again that you get started on an assignment too. And I'll see you all on Friday. Yes, sir.
I have my camera on the whole time.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
everybody had their camera on. That I don't think I mentioned anything about that.
No, my camera's so close to my face because I can't see the screen.
I can appreciate that. Between now and Friday, let's try and find a way to adjust that, because I think that's probably a problem with the solution. And then we'll meet up again on Friday. But this has been a pretty consistent policy throughout, so I'm not sure why it will be confusion today. But Stephen, I appreciate you being able to adhere to the policy accordingly. Make sure you can do it 2 days in a row.